Hi, everybody. This is Teddy Atlas. Welcome to the Ringside Boxing Show. Glad you're joining us. Make sure you're ducking and bobbing and weaving. You never know.
Live from Monterey on California's beautiful Central Coast, this is the Ringside Boxing Show. I'm Dennis Taylor, welcoming you to join me and my expert analysts, Travis Hartman, Rizwan Zahid, and John J. Responsi today and every week for the hottest, sweatiest show on the West Coast. And now, from Studio 1A, it's the Ringside Boxing Show.
Welcome to the Ringside Boxing Show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. I'm Dennis Taylor, and we got another really interesting show coming at you today. In a short time from now, we're going to talk to a welterweight contender who fought from 1977 to 1985, and he was ranked number 8 in the world when he walked away from the sport to join the rat race with the rest of us and support his family. Herman Montes, the Kid, quit boxing just 8 months after he scored a spectacular knockout victory over future Hall of Famer and former world champion Pipino Cuevas, a win that really should have brought him a world title shot, but the politics of boxing got in the way and the phone call never came, and Montes called it a career with a 33-4 record, including 20 knockouts, and spoiler alert, it was not an easy thing for him to do. He missed the bright lights, the ring walk, the roar of the crowd, the fame, and he never fought again. This is a really interesting conversation with a guy who deserves to be remembered and a guy who knows that in another era, he almost certainly would have been a world champion. We'll also be hearing today from our British correspondent, Paul McLaughlin, who will update us on the recent happenings in the United Kingdom boxing scene. And we'll get it started today with a look at the recent boxing with our expert analyst, Travis Hartman, the professional boxer, trainer, and promoter from Osborne, Missouri. He's now living and training in Orlando, Florida. Rizwan Zahid, the boxing journalist from Toronto, and John J. Responsi's chief lead writer for MaxBoxing.com and DogHouseBoxing.com. And John and I are co-authors of Intimate Warfare, the true story of the Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward boxing trilogy, an Amazon bestseller. Hey, guys, 2 pretty interesting fights on Saturday night, even though there weren't any modern-day A-listers involved. Jean Pascal was, Riz pointed this out, a 25-1 underdog going into his fight with Marcus Brown, but he knocked him down 3 times and came away with a technical decision victory to win an interim title belt. With those 3 knockdowns, Pascal won on all 3 scorecards, 75-74, after an accidental headbutt opened a really bad cut over Brown's eye in the 8th round. Pascal's 36 years old, and he's been kind of a hard-luck fighter. He's lost some close, very tough decisions. Brown was a 2012 U.S. Olympian. He was 23-0 with 16 knockouts. He's only 28 years old. Travis, you got to love this outcome, don't you?
For sure. You always love it when not just an underdog, but the guy was a spectacular fighter and a spectacular talent. I'm talking about Pascal coming up. I mean, the guy had amazing hand speed. I mean, I think his style, it sort of reminds you a little bit of like a Roy Jones almost. He kind of fought kind of similar like that, and even had the similar body stature as a Roy Jones. So Pascal's always been exciting. So I'm happy to see it. I mean, anytime the underdog wins and comes away with a victory like that, especially Pascal's a little bit later in his career, obviously, and Brown is just kind of getting started. I think that was his first title defense, I believe. So because he just won the world title, so it's kind of cool to see that the young bucks realize that us veterans still got a little bit left in the tank. So I definitely think there'll be a rematch for sure. I mean, there should be with a technical decision like that. But I know that Riz is super happy. I mean, being Canadian and all, and obviously the personal story behind Marcus Brown, which is, I don't even want to mention, but it's just terrible, some of the things he's been into outside of the boxing ring. But overall, I mean, I think it was a good night for Jean Pascal, and good for him, and good for boxing, because boxing, we always need the underdog to win, because it keeps us experts and us critics on our toes, because if we always predicted the exact outcome, that wouldn't be fun. So it makes it kind of interesting that we never really know. And I also love it when Vegas is wrong. Vegas is 25-1 was Pascal's underdog. I'm like, what the heck were they looking at? What were they watching? Because obviously Pascal can fight, and he proved it. I mean, he went out there and he absolutely proved it with true grit and talent, and he got the job done. So I love it when Vegas gets upset. So it's a good day all around for boxing, I believe.
Riz, I don't know if you predicted the upset, but I think you were suspicious of it. You were the guy who pointed out it was 25-1, and that was kind of exasperating to you. Did you see this coming at all?
Well, just the same way when I looked at him against Chad Dawson, which I can't believe it's almost 10 years ago now. I said the same thing. I didn't necessarily think Pascal was going to win, but I looked at the odds and I said, this is not a foregone conclusion because, like Dawson, I never rated Brown that high. And also, 25-1 is astronomical. That's closer to the level that we got with Ruiz and Joshua. And Ruiz is kind of filling opponent and all that. Plus, on top of that, Pascal fought Dimitri Bivol last year. And to me, Bivol is a much better fighter who has much longer amateur background and is considered, the total package in so many ways. No one really said that about Brown. We've seen a lot of holes in Marcus Brown. So, and the odds in the Pascal fight with Bivol wasn't that wide. So I didn't understand what they were kind of seeing here, because I think we saw. I don't know if you guys remember, but Pascal, when he actually had his initial first retirement, which lasted about 3 months, was in Florida actually against an Egyptian American who fights out of Miami, Ahmed Alabai, I think his last name is, and the kid was undefeated, and it was supposed to just be an easy showcase for him. And Pascal pulled off a knockout, the upset, retired. Then he thought, you know what, I think I still have it, so I can come back. And I just saw a lot of similarities with Brown and Dawson. Right? I understand it's been 10 years, but even the first 4 rounds, Brown didn't look great. All right, and Pascal just looked like he was just slow to pull the trigger. But just like it was 10 years ago, we had a southpaw who was rangy, but very suspicious defense, and really hasn't had to have a hard fight yet. Where he had to dig deep. He hasn't had that. We saw Badou Jack against Brown. Brown was winning by talent, and Jack suffered maybe one of the worst cuts we've ever seen. And the funny thing is, from what I read, apparently Brown was, even after the fact, said something like, he said something along the lines of, he was going to beat him anyways, and, the cut had nothing to do with it, and then all of a sudden he gets cut in his next fight, and he totally forgets about it, right? But I just thought it was a good, complete story, considering Brown's been arrested about 4 times in the last year and a half or something like that. So first of all, how he's able to even fight and make money should not be allowed. But I do think it's a little funny. I do think it's a little funny that, for domestic violence. So I do think it's a little funny that, if you heard after the interview, Pascal said he heard his daughter cheering for him, his 16-year-old daughter, and when he heard that, that's when he scored the 2 knockdowns, and then won the 8th round, which ultimately won in the fight. And on a personal note, I run into Jean Pascal in around the boxing scene a few times. You cannot meet a nicer person. Yeah. I'll give you a story actually. About a year and a half ago, when we went to cover the David Lemieux Billy Joe Saunders fight out in Laval, I was with a friend who had to purchase a ticket. So waiting at the ticket box office, Pascal shows up with his crew, and they're supposed to have tickets on hold for him. They did not, so he's asking, hey, where are my tickets? And they said, I have to talk to my manager. Most fighters at that point would have played the do you know who I am card. Pascal didn't. You could tell he was a little annoyed, but he just waited patiently. My buddy asked him to take a picture. Pascal did not object in the slightest. He shook it, and he just took his time. And it's funny that, you compare it to Roy Jones. He looked up to Roy Jones. He emulated his style after Roy Jones. Roy Jones trained him for a bit. And I saw the same thing with Roy Jones after the fight, just wanting to take pictures with everyone. There's a very few good guys in the world, let alone in sports, let alone in boxing. Pascal is one of them. So you really couldn't, this is going to be an upset that's really, I would say, underrated, and it's going to be overlooked. But this has to be, if it wasn't for Joshua and Ruiz, this is upset of the year, right? It just happened to be in the same, 2 months apart of one of the greatest upsets of all time, right? If this is any other year, this is upset of the year. And especially because it's 10 years after the fact where Pascal won. Pascal's almost 37. You got to remember that. This is not a 32-year-old pulling off an upset, right? Ruiz was 28 or something, and he pulled off an upset. That's not what happened here. This was the guy who was over the hill and has already been, at least in retirement mode, for a certain period of time. I know it was short-lived, but at least mentally he was there. And this is not a guy who needs to fight for money. Pascal has done very, very well in the fights he's made, headlining Montreal fights. And you think of, in terms of resumes, This guy's fought everyone. Hopkins, Kovalev twice, Carl Froch, which is still one of the best super middleweight fights and very underrated fight. And then he came back and fought Bivol, and now he fought Marcus Brown. So there's not really a lot of guys he hasn't fought. And again, he's not here for the money. And it's just funny that, when Hopkins fought him, Hopkins was, Pascal was a young guy, and Hopkins was the veteran beating him. And I think now we almost see it full circle, right? Pascal's an old guy now, but he didn't fight like the old guy. He fought. This was the most, even though he lost more rounds than we usually see him, this is the most composed and paced I've seen Pascal. Because usually it's a 6-round spin for him, and then he fades away because he is a very muscular dude, and I think he's also cleaned up his eating and his nutrition and all that over the last few years too. But it's just nice to see a good story, and I think that's what we happen here, because against Badou Jack, also one of the greatest people you could ever meet, suffered a very unfortunate head clash that took away any chance he had coming back in the fight. And let's just say Marcus Brown, I don't curse often on the show, but he's a piece of shit. So let's just say his last name is very fitting. So it was good. It was good to see. It was good to, and the funny thing is, the unofficial scorecards, a lot of people gave that 8th round 9-9. Because I think there's still maybe some confusion on what judges are how they're supposed to score that final round. But if you watch that 8th round, I think Pascal knew kind of the situation, especially after the accidental headbutt, and then he pushed even that 20-30 seconds. He realized, like, if this is stopped, me winning this round would put me over the edge, and that's what he did. And we've seen, Pascal has always had a weird style, and you got to remember, Bernard Hopkins, as great as he was knocked down twice against Pascal, right? And the first time around. And that's not, you can count a handful of guys who've ever come close to him landing a good shot on Hopkins. But because Pascal is not your normal fighter, but he's a tremendous athlete who has tremendous heart. And at 37, a guy who's coming in with distractions and Brown. And Pascal, again, we didn't hear really much of him building up to the fight. The only thing I read the other day is, he says he's like, Marcus Brown likes beating up women. He's not beating up a woman on Saturday night, right? He's in there with a man, and I think that Pascal fought like that, and it's good to see a good guy have a good story, because no one's more deserving of that. And again, upset of the year, if it wasn't for Ruiz and Joshua, any other year I can't think of a 25-1 underdog winning a title at 37. Like, that just doesn't happen. So it's going to be one of the more overlooked upsets, not just of the year, but of the last maybe 5 or 10 years, because really no one saw this coming, and especially it's an undercard fight too. So everything about this was overlooked, and for Pascal, I don't think he cared. He went there, he did his job, and it was the most surprising title regain after 8 years away from the belt that I've seen in a very, very long time.
Yeah, John. I mean, it was white hat against a black hat, and the good guy won. And then in the main event, I think everybody kind of expected Adam Kanaki and Chris Arreola to put on an action fight, but they set a new CompuBox record for most punches thrown and landed in a heavyweight fight. I don't know if anybody saw that coming. Kanaki came away with a unanimous decision, 118-110. And then 117-111 twice. There were no knockdowns, and neither guy ever really appeared to be in any serious trouble. Both guys got tired in the second half of the fight. So, there's ups and downs about it. But what did you think of this one? Were you entertained?
Yeah, and I'll say this about Marcus Brown. The word that comes to my mind is karma. You have to be very careful of that. And the other thing that I'm going to say is that through 3.5 rounds, Marcus Brown was dominating that fight. I mean, all it took was one right hand to change that fight. And then Brown went back to winning, and he got caught with another right hand based more on recklessness and the wiliness and cleverness and just the brain of Jean Pascal. So, yeah, that was a very very enjoyable outcome for that fight. Yeah, the Arreola Kanaki fight was what we expected, in a sense that it would be rock'em sock'em, but I don't think any of us expected it to go the distance. Arreola looked like he was in great shape, and there were some experts saying that he was washed up and finished and through. So in a sense, his story was a good one too. He had some redemption, even though he lost. he showed that he still had something left. He's another guy that when I met him, like Riz met Pascal, I met Arreola 6 or 7 years ago, and he was just a great guy, funny and welcoming to everybody, and it was at a weigh-in. And it didn't matter who you were or what you were doing. Hey, how's it going? Shake hands with you, and just an all-around super nice guy. He's one of those guys you can't help but pull for because he's the old-type gladiator. And so is Adam Kanaki. I mean, he's the same kind of gladiator. So it was like they were facing, it was like a mirror image of each other. And, yeah, it was 12 rounds of action, kind of slow, but I mean, these are heavyweights, so I saw that comment, well, the action was kind of slow. It's like, well, these guys weigh 500 pounds between them. And it's not going to be like two bantamweights going at you. I mean, these are big people, these are big guys, 6'3", 250 pounds roughly, throwing shots at each other and hitting each other with some good shots. So it was a little surprising, like I said, that mostly because Arreola was 38. And he'd been knocked out a few times, but he got with Joe Goosen, who we recently had on our show. And if you remember, Dennis, he said that Chris was doing everything he asked him to do, and he was working on his defense. Now, defense and Chris Arreola don't go hand in hand, but he did show some subtle differences in the fight. He didn't get hit with everything. He moved, he slid, he ducked a few times, and Deontay Wilder was there, and he could end up fighting Kanaki someday. And I'm sure he was just thinking, "Wow, this guy's so easy to hit. I'm just gonna destroy him with my right hand." But Kanaki, he's pretty accurate, so that fight could be very interesting, especially if he can take Wilder's punch. So if it happens, I mean, it wouldn't happen until next year. So it was a really good heavyweight fight. It wasn't over in one round, which is what we kind of get accustomed to, or 2 rounds, 3 rounds. It was competitive. Definitely the decision was correct. I saw a few people that thought it was a little closer. Maybe. I think it was closer than 118 to 110. 117 to 111 is the other judges. I think that's right. But it was a good fight and good for television, good for boxing, for people to see, because that's the kind of fight that are the good ones. They checked Arreola a few times because he was taking some hard shots, more than I think they would have because of the recent unfortunate deaths in the ring. A couple of times the doctor checked him, asked him a few questions, he answered. So that's good. I don't have a problem with that, because this was one of those fights that we were talking about where guys can get hurt, where they're grueling, they're brutal. Guys getting hit with shots, and he was fine, and everybody came out of it okay. So just a good night and a good redemption story for Chris Arreola. And Big Adam Kanaki, he goes on, he moves on. I don't know who he's going to fight next, but he's an interesting guy to watch.
And and another big week for guys with dad bods. So
yeah, exactly.
Hooray for us guys. Hey guys, turbulent week for Canelo Alvarez and Golden Boy, and I'm going to try and summarize it here because it's the story's kind of complicated. First, the IBF announced that it was going to strip Canelo's middleweight title belt because he didn't get the fight made with his mandatory Sergey Derevyanchenko in time, and they actually did that. Canelo's promoter, Oscar De La Hoya, claims that they had been in serious negotiations with Derevyanchenko's promoter and offered him, quote, an unprecedented amount of money for his limited stature and popularity, unquote, but they couldn't come to terms, even after Derevyanchenko's team extended the deadline for Golden Boy to make an acceptable offer. So Canelo's all pissed off that he was stripped of his title, and he seems to blame Golden Boy for not communicating with him about the situation. So there's trouble in paradise there. Golden Boy, I think, saw the Derevyanchenko fight as just not worth the money, since Derevyanchenko lost to Daniel Jacobs in October, and then Jacobs lost to Canelo in May. Realistically, how many people are going to be interested in paying pay-per-view money to watch Canelo Derevyanchenko, right? So now Canelo looks likely to fight Demetrius Andrade, and Derevyanchenko is probably going to fight Golovkin, who also beat Jacobs, the guy who beat Derevyanchenko. And the punchline there is that Golovkin and Derevyanchenko are going to be fighting for the IBF title that just was taken away from Canelo. So that's got to, make Canelo even angrier. And you guys know what a great hip-hop historian I am. The notorious B.I.G. said, "Mo money, mo problems, Travis." And Canelo and De La Hoya, their blood pressure seems to have gone up a whole bunch since they took all that money from DAZN. So there's no question in there, but, I just wanted to get somebody's take on this, because what a week, huh?
Yeah, I mean, also, if you guys saw that Ryan Garcia, another very popular guy for Golden Boy, sent out a tweet being unhappy with his promotion as well. So there might be some trouble in paradise there. And Ryan Garcia has been training with Canelo. So if you upset your two biggest, by all means, Canelo is one of the best fighters in the world. Ryan Garcia not up there to that stature, but he has the popularity of probably the second most popular guy that Golden Boy actually honestly has. So it looks like those two are upset right now. That's not going to go well for Golden Boy. But let's be honest, Golden Boy, they're smart. They know what they're doing, meaning Canelo's their cash cow. They're going to make him happy. They're going to find a way to make this happy and make him okay. And I guarantee it should, by all means, work out. But if it doesn't, then maybe we're going to see one of those things that always happens. I mean, it happened with Oscar De La Hoya. He was professional and he was signed with Top Rank and Bob Arum. And what happened when De La Hoya started getting really, really popular? He branched off. He started Golden Boy Promotions. It happens to all of the super, super top-level fighters. Once they get popular enough, they don't need a promoter. So maybe this is that transition that Canelo is eventually going into. Maybe eventually Canelo's probably going to leave Golden Boy, because at the end of the day, guys, Golden Boy needs Canelo more than Canelo needs Golden Boy. And that's the truth, and we all know that, because Canelo is a household name now. Golden Boy still is, but if Canelo left Golden Boy, you wouldn't see a drop-off in his ratings. You wouldn't see a drop-off in the people who buy tickets to go see Canelo. They still love Canelo. They don't love Canelo's promoter just because, and they don't watch Canelo just because of Oscar De La Hoya. Those times are past. So Golden Boy has to be very, very careful of their next couple of moves, because at the end of the day, like I said, Canelo, he kind of holds all the cards right now. He's Canelo Alvarez. By all means, in my opinion, I think he's the best pound-for-pound fighter, one of the best pound-for-pound fighters out there, and he definitely is the one with the highest ratings and the highest gross pay-per-view sales and the highest gross of everything right now. So they better be careful what they're doing. And then you have the other guy coming up. You have, let's call him Canelo Jr., Ryan Garcia. He's got so much popularity with social media. I mean, I know the guy's got over 1 million followers. I think he's got multi-million followers on Instagram. So that alone, this kid brings in a lot of money as well. And he's undefeated. So Golden Boy is really stepping on the feet of their two biggest cash cows. So this is going to be an interesting drama to see unfold. But I stand by what I said at the end of the day. Canelo doesn't necessarily need Golden Boy. And I think that we all know that. And at the end of the day, Golden Boy has to figure that out too and start doing what's right for Canelo. But we'll see.
You know what? Just to spin off what Travis just said, I'm trying to figure out what would make Canelo happy. DAZN's paying big money for both Canelo and Golovkin, and they obviously want Canelo to fight Golovkin for the third time, which would bring a lot of pay-per-view viewers, but Canelo's not interested in that. DAZN also would like to have seen Canelo fight Kovalev, which also would have been a box office bonanza, but Golden Boy apparently lowballed Kovalev, and that fight went away. So now they've got Andrade, who's, I think, high risk for Canelo. It's not the easiest style matchup for him, and it's a low financial reward for DAZN compared to those other things. So it seems like everybody's miserable right now except Derevyanchenko and Andrade, who are getting the two biggest fighters in the division, doesn't it? Riz, what do you think would make Canelo happy? What's he looking for? What does he want?
I don't think he wants to fight Golovkin again. And I don't think I'm not he's scared, blah blah blah, none of that. I just think it's one of those things he has, regardless of what we all think, he has a W on his record, even though we all kind of disagree with it, and he can just kind of move on. But I think he does want to fight Kovalev. And I think his issue is that, because, I mean, in the end, if you're asking Derevyanchenko, Kovalev, and Andrade, who's a more difficult style for Canelo, I think it's Andrade. Despite Kovalev's size and all that, we still, Kovalev is not exactly very quick. right? Where Andrade, I mean, if Canelo didn't like Jacob's style, do you think he's really going to like the movement of Andrade? So I think that's the bigger issue, and I completely agree with Travis. Canelo hasn't needed Golden Boy for a really long time. But De La Hoya was, he was the older brother to Canelo and all that. I mean, let's face it, Golden Boy as a promotion has been awful for a really long time. They lost all their fighters to PBC when that whole thing actually started with Al Heyman. Schaefer was the one who kind of kept the Mayweather fights happening under the Golden Boy banner. So what really does Golden Boy have? All they pretty much have is Canelo. And I think Canelo's kind of realizing that. Like, why am I even letting them dictate the shots at this point? I think he understands with DAZN. With DAZN wants the big fights. I don't think Canelo was shying away from the big fights. He hasn't really done that before. I don't think Canelo is married to not losing, if that makes sense. I don't think he's someone who's trying to just keep his record intact. I think he understands that he can lose, come back, and still have another big fight and still, draw numbers and all those sort of things. Where I think De La Hoya at this point is trying to protect him from, even though they have like the 10-fight contract or whatever else, I don't think he wants him to take those fights when he can try to fight the B- guys and just consistently make money. I think he's just trying to, I think he's just trying to get a bigger return on his investment. And I think that's what he's looking at it right now. But that's a problem because I can't see a reason at this point why Canelo will stay with Golden Boy. And Travis mentioned it. I mean, De La Hoya started his own promotion company. Mayweather did the same. Pacquiao, all these guys have done the same. So why wouldn't Canelo do the same? Especially at this point with DAZN. Or, if anything, you can just hop over with DAZN and stick with Eddie Hearn, who has already laid the foundation for a lot of massive fights. So at this point, we really have to ask, what is De La Hoya offering? Because I can't see a reason he would, Canelo that is, stick with De La Hoya if he doesn't have to.
Do you think Canelo is also angry at Golden Boy for lowballing Kovalev, not making that fight happen? If you were Canelo and you wanted to fight Kovalev, wouldn't you say, give him what he wants?
I think that's exactly what it is. Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. I don't think he had, again, it's if I tell you, hey, can you make me an offer with this guy? And you say sure, and then you give him such a lowball offer, and then say, oh no, sorry, it didn't work. And it's like, what do you mean it didn't work? Like, what did you offer him? And you offered him nothing? Well, obviously he's not going to take that, right? I mean, if you're Kovalev fighting Canelo for nothing and maybe getting embarrassed if you lose, or going to Russia to fight, Anthony Yarde, but you're fighting in your hometown and all those, and obviously you're going to get a bigger slice of the pie too. There's a lot of things, and again, and this is why we're not seeing. I mean, think about the potential opponents that went through. We listed a bunch of guys. Errol Spence was rumored to be an opponent. Kovalev, Callum Smith, Golovkin, Derevyanchenko. You really couldn't make a fight with any of these guys. I find that really hard to believe, and that doesn't happen unless there's insincere efforts from one promoter side. And I think that's what happens here. And I think Canelo is more frustrated because I think his reputation is being thrown in the mud. I think he already dealt with that last year. He already had one PR nightmare. And I think it's bothering him now because I think last time, I mean, you can't, you got to know what you're putting in your body. But I think this time he knows this is not my fault at all. I am not involved in this at all. I'm trying to make fights happen and people are preventing me from doing so. So I understand why he's frustrated.
Okay, well, here's another situation that seems even foggier today than it was a week ago, and that's Dillian White, who supposedly failed his drug test with the UKAD, which is the United Kingdom Drug Testing Agency, before his fight with Oscar Rivas. And that announcement came from the British Board of Control on July 25th. The dates are kind of important here. That was 5 days after the fight. But the dirty test reportedly was administered in late June, a month before the fight. And the results of that were made known to the British board at a hearing on July 17th, 3 days before the fight. So neither Rivas nor his promoter, Yvonne Michel, were informed that White had tested dirty, and White, for reasons still unknown, was cleared to fight by both the British board and the UK testing agency that had found the tainted results in that July 17th hearing. So Rivas went through with the fight on July 20th and lost a unanimous decision. The situation got more muddled on Thursday when VADA, the Voluntary Anti-Drug Association, announced that it also had conducted multiple tests on White between April 26th and July 21st, and they said all of his tests came out clean. So we don't know whether White was dirty or clean right now. Meanwhile, for some reason, we don't have the results of White's B sample, which has also been tested by UKAD, and we don't know how that came out. And by the way, these drug tests cost $35,000, and that's charged to the fighter. We learned that last week from Teddy Atlas. So the fighter has to pay that. Has to pay $35,000 for his own drug test, which is amazing to us. What a convoluted mess, John. And how terrible is it for the sport? One testing agency finds banned substances, another finds nothing. The fight goes forward despite the confusion, but it's all kept secret from the opponent, who is facing a guy who might be illegally juiced. How crazy is all this? You know, we talk about what's good for boxing. Man, this sucks, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, it's hideous. It's terrible. It's the worst. It's muddled, like you said. It's confusing. I don't know what side is up on this, except I do know this: it's dirty, and I don't like it. I think it's the worst black eye on boxing that you could ever imagine. And repeating what we said when this first happened, the fact that the fight still went on, and the fact that Eddie Hearn, who I've actually kind of liked at times, could stand there with a straight face and say, he was cleared here. We went on with the fight, to me is disgraceful. And I'm really hoping that something huge happens from this, because I don't like the fact that it is a muddled mess. It makes me more suspicious. The fact that the B sample that you were talking about, what did it get buried someplace? I mean, why is it such a problem? It's always available, from what I understand. The fact that the fighters have to pay $35,000. Why do the fighters have to pay? What about the promoters? I don't get that one. Well, the whole thing is disgraceful, but that part makes no sense to me. And I think if this is where, if somebody was really ambitious, they could come in and say, look, we need to get a union for the fighters. We need to form something. We need to make this right for them, because why do they have to pay all this money? I mean, you could, I guess, make an argument that, okay, the fighter will pay half and the promoter will pay half, which I don't like either, because the fighters have to pay for so many things a lot of times, especially the ones that aren't known. You know, when I covered so many fights from lower type fighters, and they didn't have any insurance. When they got cut and they went to the hospital, they had to pay. The promoters or whatever go, I don't have a couple of $1,000s, and you're like, and so it just, again, it's just a reminder that boxing is so bad in so many ways. And what this is doing, Dennis, to me, is it's showing it. And I don't like it. I don't like it being shown like this, because you can't really ignore it if you love the sport. And you want something to change, but it won't unless there's a commission. And nobody says anything. You ever notice that? You notice that there aren't a lot of people really even talking about this.
Yeah.
It's just and that is disgraceful. It's just like we've grown numb to some of this stuff, and we go, oh, okay, I'm waiting for the B sample, but we got another fight coming up here. So it really is upsetting. It's hurtful, and it sounds weird for me to say that, but it's not me that's hurt. It's the sport and the fighters, and that's the thing that bothers me more than anything. Those guys are the guys that are putting it on the line. And a guy like Oscar Rivas, who doesn't even know, again, we talked about this before, about Dillian White, I find that the most dishonest, disgraceful thing that I had read in boxing in a while, that they don't even tell him. Probably, why they didn't tell him, because they figured that he'd say, well, I'm not fighting.
Right.
So, it's like, come on, man. I mean, these are people here. Where is the decency? Obviously, there's none in this whole thing. far as I'm concerned. I mean, I'm still holding out some kind of hope that it's not as bad as I think it is, but it's hard to keep hope with boxing because it tends to be as bad as you think. And, go ahead.
I was going to say, I could see the fighter getting nicked if he flunks the drug test. He's liable if he tests dirty for the whole package, the $35,000. Travis, did you know about that? Did you know the fighter has to pay that?
I didn't know that. I'm sure that that's somewhere in the contracts before the fight, so it just doesn't seem to be plausible that they just throw that out there. I believe that the fighters definitely have to agree to that beforehand. It's probably just something built into the contract, I'm guessing, because that's a lot of money. And, I mean, $35,000 is a lot of money. Like, they better be making millions or $500,000 or something like that to be paying $35,000 for a test. And that's right, John. You're spot on. We need a commissioner. There needs to be one overall commissioner. There needs to be a fighters union. There needs to be a commissioner. We need to get together like every other modern day professional organization. Football has a players union. Football has an overall commissioner that runs the whole league. Every NBA has it. MLB has it. Why does boxing not have it? It's just we need that. We need the boss. We need a boss. And if history tells us anything, we always need rules. We need laws. We need a boss. And right now, boxing is exploiting the hell out of all of these loopholes that are built into these boxing organizations and these boxing commissions that are not abiding by the same rules. I don't get. This is what I don't get. I don't get how this guy tested positive way back in June or whatever, and the other opponent wasn't informed. You know what? Yeah. I'm okay if you don't tell the media. You know what? Keep it and under closed doors, whatever. But how is the other team not informed? That way they can make a better informed decision while they're putting their fighter at risk, because we're already putting our lives, literally, and we know this just because of recently as well, but us fighters, pro fighters, are putting our lives on the line every time we step between those ropes. I believe firmly that we should have all information regarding our health going into every single fight. And what I mean by that is if I find out that the other guy tested positive, whether it was a convoluted sample, whatever, I want to know the story. I should be afforded that story, period. That's all there is to it. And you need to tell me the whole story, and then I can make a decision after that. Whether his test results were false positives, I don't know what it is, because they're obviously not telling us anything. So they're kind of just letting us sit out here and just shout out all of these situations that we don't know anything about yet. But the fact is, they need to inform the other team of these things. And then if the other team and a board has said, okay, you know what, the test was a false positive, whatever it may be, we don't know. And that's what's sad about this too, guys, is that we don't know anything. Like, they're just not telling us anything pretty much. And that's what's the most saddening of it all. We need some kind of governing body that's outside of all of this. We need an impartial person, like a fighters union, somebody that can be the mediator, that can be the middleman here, that can make sure us fighters are being taken care of. Because at the end of the day, that's what's going on, is us fighters are putting our lives on the line, and now we're just getting taken advantage of, while all these other people make so much money off of us. They're making money off of our testing. And if these testing companies that I'm paying $35,000 to, one of them is saying that I tested positive and one is saying that I tested negative, why am I paying this? I want somebody to give me an accurate test result, especially if I'm paying $35,000. So it just seems like the fighters, their health is being taken advantage of, their money's being taken advantage of. I don't know why the powers to be, we have never united and come together for a players union or a fighters union. I don't know how that's never happened in boxing, and maybe we're closer than ever to one because of stuff like this. But to me, this is just sad that the other fighter wasn't informed, that the other camp wasn't informed of what was going on. Whether it was false, whether it was positive, whether it was whatever, the other team deserves to know what's going on. And these guys should be liable in court as well, in my opinion, for the fact that they kept us away from the other team.
This is the Ringside Boxing Show from Monterey, California. I'm Dennis Taylor. We're talking to our expert analyst, Travis Hartman, Rizwan Zahid, John J. Risponti. All right, here's a mystery that you guys might be able to clear up for the entire boxing world. Who the hell is Boo Boy Fernandez? The Manila Bulletin in the Philippines is reporting that Freddie Roach and Boo Boy Fernandez, who are Manny Pacquiao's co-trainers, I guess, they're feuding. Boo Boy told the media that Roach's opinion won't matter at all to Pacquiao when it comes to retirement, and Roach took offense to that and implied that the difference between himself and Boo Boy is that he, Roach, will tell Pacquiao the truth when he sees him slowing down, and I believe that, and he hinted that Boo Boy might not. Boo Boy's a buddy, I guess. So, guys, my take on Boo Boy is that he's mostly part of Team Pacquiao because Pacquiao, felt sorry for him at this point and thought he was a little bit pathetic and befriended him and gave him a job, a gopher job. And, he carried the spit bucket. He held the mitts sometimes on days when Freddie wasn't healthy enough. Then Pacquiao lost a horn, and Pacquiao put Freddie on the shelf for a fight and promoted Boo Boy to head trainer, and that lasted one fight before Pacquiao asked Roach to come back. So I guess, Riz, I can understand why Roach thinks Boo Boy should shut his pie hole on this. He's closer to being a team mascot than a Hall of Fame trainer, isn't he?
You know what? I'll say this. I think Boo Boy and Pacquiao grew up together, and I think that's why he's trusted in his inner circle. But I'll say this. This is not too long after Freddie Roach had to play co-trainer again, and he did that in the Tyson Fury-Wilder fight, and he was putting a lot of the blame on Fury's other trainer. I think Ben Davis is his name. So, I mean, at this point, there's an ego with Roach. This is not anything new. And even though you're right, he might tell him to slow down. But that being said, I mean, Roach has kind of worked. I don't know. We've seen how many fighters work with Roach in the last year, and most of them have resulted in losses. So at this point, at a certain point, not so much in boxing, but in other sports, guys know when to, in basketball, so to speak, some guys know when it's time to go to the bench and be the bench player, and being the leader and all those sort of things and take a step back. I don't think Roach has kind of realized that yet. It seems like a lot of the friction is always caused by him. And this is not just now. This is before. This is with, with all the other guys who've been in Pacquiao's camp and all that. This is going back over like a decade now. But the Fury fight really told me something because unlike Pacquiao, he was brought in as the second dude. He wasn't the first trainer there. He was just brought in for a little advice and all that. And then he said, he started critiquing all the mistakes. That's not what your job is there. I feel like with Roach now, there's a certain amount of distractions that just come. And I think at this point at Pacquiao's age, to be honest, like at this age with all that Pacquiao's done, is there any fight he's going to go in and he's going to have a game plan that he wouldn't have thought about otherwise with another trainer? No, I don't think it really makes a difference, to be honest. At this point, Pacquiao's seen everything there is in boxing. There's nothing you're going to tell him that's going to be different for him, especially in terms of a training camp and all those sort of things. At this point, it's just second nature. He could have me in the corner and he'll have pretty much the same result, I feel, right? Although he probably shouldn't be on my nutrition plan. He wouldn't make weight. But besides that, I mean, at this point, I just think he knows everything. So I don't think, trainers at this point, I think are just more in the fight. You give a little guidance to like, hey, I think you're being a little too aggressive. Take a back step. And then the fighter will be like, okay, yeah. You don't have to tell them how to throw a jab at this point, right? So I think everyone kind of needs to check their ego at the door, and the trainers just shouldn't have the ego. The trainers are the last people to have egos. And I think that's why, that's what makes certain trainers, like, you'll never see any friction with Buddy McGirt. You'll never hear of anyone say anything negative or any friction with Buddy McGirt ever, because he knows it's about the fighter. And I think certain trainers are kind of missing that. It's about the fighter. And you can't be criticizing, the other trainer and co-trainer during that, because then you're causing friction within the fighter themselves. And the fighter has to manage your ego, and the fighter has to manage your, I wouldn't say expectations, but your fighter has to manage all the nonsense that's going around you. That's not what the fighter wants to do. The fighter has enough stuff going on. Don't cause Pacquiao any more drama than he needs.
Okay, one more for you guys.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Travis. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of just disagree a little bit, because my opinion is that financially, Freddie Roach he doesn't really care if Manny Pacquiao keeps fighting. So I believe more than ever that he cares about Manny's health more than anything. And I know Boo Boy's a longtime friend, but Boo Boy is also somebody who financially depends on Manny Pacquiao. So for one, his opinion is a little bit biased because he wants Manny to keep fighting because that's how he makes a payday. And also, it's not that he has any ill intentions for Manny Pacquiao, but also Boo Boy doesn't know the dangers that come along for a fighter fighting too long. I mean, we all know that Freddie Roach definitely knows that because Freddie Roach is a former fighter as well. And while boxing is not a definite a diagnosis for Parkinson's disease, it obviously probably doesn't help it. It's probably not good that you're getting punched in the brain because Parkinson's is a brain disorder. So I think that I respect Freddie Roach's opinion here. And all Freddie Roach is saying is that he cares about Manny Pacquiao and that he'll tell him the truth. And I have no problem with that. I don't think that's an ego thing. I think that is a real trainer actually caring about their fighters, because I wouldn't say Freddie Roach cares about all of his fighters, but I think of any of his fighters, I think personally he cares more about Manny Pacquiao, and that's why I have no problem. I mean, Boo Boy, who is Boo Boy? Boo Boy is a longtime friend that came from the Philippines. Boo Boy's experience in boxing has specifically come from Freddie Roach and Manny Pacquiao. So I'm going to go to the leader, which is which is Freddie Roach, and I'm going to listen to what Freddie Roach says because that's what Boo Boy learned from. Boo Boy learned from Freddie Roach, and he learned from Manny Pacquiao. So I'm taking Freddie Roach's opinion, and I'm taking Freddie Roach's expertise over a guy named Boo Boy Fernandez. And that goes with boxing, that goes with personal things, that goes with everything, because I genuinely believe Freddie Roach doesn't really, not anymore, have a financial interest in Manny Pacquiao. Freddie Roach has plenty of money. Freddie Roach is a smart guy. Freddie Roach doesn't live lavishly. He's made a ton of money, and if Manny Pacquiao retires, Freddie Roach is still going to be okay. If Manny Pacquiao retires, will Boo Boy Fernandez be okay? I don't think he will.
Okay, last one,
Dennis,
guys.
Dennis,
yeah,
I got something to say
go
about
ahead.
that too. Yeah, I got something to say about it.
Sure.
I think everybody's right here. I remember that Freddie Roach told Manny Pacquiao he should retire after the Horn fight, and he didn't. So who's right? Then Boo Boy's right when he said that. Not that makes a big headline, but that was his point. I think he remembers that too. But I also think that Travis is right too. That there is obviously a financial motivation for Boo Boy, but he's going to be with Manny Pacquiao all his life, and Manny will probably take care of him as long as he's got money. And Freddie, as we know, and I like him. And then there's times where I just roll my eyes, like when he was criticizing Tyson Fury's trainer. I thought that was totally out of line. I thought that was totally wrong. So he said he does things that I'm fine with, and then he does things even before fights when he's making all kinds of predictions, like he does before every Pacquiao fight. He's going to knock him out. He's going to knock him out. He's going to knock him out. He's going to knock. Just gets old. And I agree more with Riz about that. I think the ego has been out of control for him for a while. It's not you, Freddie. It's Manny. So this is to me this is one of those stories, a story non-story, because Freddie could have let that go. He could have just not said anything. He didn't have to come back at Boo Boy. He could have considered the source and said, oh well, he's probably feeling a little challenged because Manny brought Freddie back, and so now they're a team. And what does this do for the future? So I just think some of these guys don't think. They just shoot from the hip, and they don't think about what's going on, and they say things, and they possibly regret them later because the damage it can do to this stuff. And Manny doesn't like any of that, from what I read. He doesn't like confrontation. He doesn't. So he just lets them figure it out themselves. But it's one of those stories that you just can't help but roll your eyes because everybody seems to have some kind of say, and everybody's got a point, but who ends up losing? It's like everybody ends up losing. So it's one of those, Dennis, to me. It's like, oh, boy, come on, guys, grow up.
And that's actually a good conversation to end on, I think. That's Travis Hartman, Rizwan Zahid, John J. Responsi. They are our expert analysts. Riz on his way to an engagement party right now, equipped with all kinds of unsolicited advice from the rest of us. Riz, congratulations, man. You have a great time.
Appreciate it. You bet.
We always knew you had it in you. You guys all have a great week, and we'll talk to you next Sunday. Paul McLaughlin is up next. Paul McLaughlin's up next to catch us up on the news on the UK, and then John's going to be back for our interview with today's featured guest, Herman Montes. This is the Ringside Boxing Show. Don't go away.
If you like the Ringside Boxing Show, you're going to love the website, ringsideboxingshow.com.
What are you doing?
Oh, boy, is this great!
Hi, I'm Dennis Taylor, host of the Ringside Boxing Show, where since 2008 we have been continuously sponsored by Garcia Boxing, the first family of the sweet science on California's beautiful Central Coast. Trainers Max and Sam Garcia and ring strategist Dean Familton are regarded among the most knowledgeable in the game. And Kathy Garcia, who manages all Garcia boxing fighters, is renowned for her integrity and career guidance, having taken 2 boxers to #1 world rankings. Together they comprise one of the most respected teams in the sport. Learn more by calling 831-261-3214 or send them an email at garciaboxing25@aol.com.
Hi there, it's Paul McLaughlin with your weekly roundup of everything going on in the UK boxing scene at the moment. We start off with Billy Joe Saunders, who has become a free agent after parting company with Frank Warren. Saunders, who won the WBO super middleweight belt in May, has missed out on career-defining fights with big names like Canelo Alvarez and Gennady Golovkin. Now, Eddie Hearn is confident he can provide Saunders with the fights he most craves. The Matchroom boss has said, Billy Joe really has no momentum in his career now. He hasn't had a big fight, and I don't know, but because he is a quality fighter, he is wasted at the moment, and we shall see. Canelo is up for fighting Billy Joe Saunders, and so was Golovkin, but they could not get it across the line. Now, we caught up with a potential rival, Callum Smith, who now thinks it's a good move for Saunders to leave Warren, as it may lead to a match between Billy Joe and himself.
Yeah, it's obviously a lot easier to make now, obviously if he does come over here, he's going to go with the same promoter, and get it, the fight that will probably happen at some point. He's a good fighter, he's talented, and he's a world champion, so we'll have to wait and see how it pans out, but it's definitely a fight that is a lot easier to make now he's left on one.
Elsewhere, Anthony Fowler returned with a wide points win over Brian Rose and then called for a rematch with Scott Fitzgerald. The Liverpudlian's unbeaten record was ended by a split decision loss to Fitzgerald in March, but he produced a more controlled performance to defeat the experienced Rose on the next-gen bill. Speaking afterwards, Fowler told us that he wants Fitzgerald to come through an expected British title clash with Ted Cheeseman to set up a second fight.
I've just seen Scott, he looks like a sumo wrestler, looks about 14 stone, so I don't know, if he's starting out in that win, if he's living the life now, he needs to get back in the gym, and hopefully Scott beat Cheeseman, because I believe Scott's a better fighter, and then if your dream comes true to box Scott at the end of the year, I don't care where it is, I'd love it in the Echo, because I can't go to the housemate, I'm in town to have a little night out, all lads up the kegs. When are you going to smash that Fitzgerald? So I need to just lose me city, I think.
Also in news, Tyson Fury is set to face Otto Wallin in his next fight, as the Swedish heavyweight's promoter is very optimistic a deal will be finalised. The former world champion had suggested he would battle an American on his planned return to the States, but Wallin appears to be leading the shortlist of opponents, with reports in the US media suggesting the fight will be staged in Las Vegas in September. Dimitri Salila, who promotes Wallin, is hopeful the unbeaten 28-year-old will soon receive confirmation of the Fury fight. And finally, Anthony Joshua's rematch with Andy Ruiz Jr. appears to be edging closer, as promoter Eddie Hearn is awaiting paperwork to be finalised, with Cardiff still the major option to stage the fight. We caught up with Eddie to tell us exactly what was going on.
I've been speaking a lot to Ruiz's team this week, sort of keeping them up to speed with where we're going. Look, they don't want to come to the UK. They never have done. I think they use the sort of Dillian White saga as a little bit of a scapegoat, you know, in that decision as well. And we have to take that into consideration. Contractually, we know our position, but we want to make sure we get the fight done. We want to respect Andy Ruiz, but we'll decide where the venue is. You know, a neutral venue he'd be a lot happier with. I think I can rule out America right now. Cardiff is still the front runner, he's still the favourite. There are some other interesting options that would be quite iconic internationally, which does involve a lot of aggravation logistically, but does involve a spectacle that would be, quite unique. So we haven't ruled out anywhere yet, but I would say that, and I keep saying this, but in the next 48 hours, Andy Ruiz's team will be alerted to where this fight will take place. And don't rule out anywhere yet. Don't rule out anywhere. Just know that the fight's happening, and Joshua is working hard to make sure he's ready to win those belts back.
Right, that's your lot from me, guys. I'll be back next week with some more boxing news from the UK. In the meantime, gloves up and protect yourselves at all times. Back to the studio.
Hey, that's Paul McLaughlin from the other side of the Atlantic. Thanks, Paul. Man, that's a big-ass ocean, isn't it? Amazing. Our featured guest is up next. We will be right back right after this. I'm Dennis Taylor, co-author of the Amazon bestseller Intimate Warfare, the true story of the Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward boxing trilogy. Writing this book was a labor of love for John J. Responti and myself. We enjoyed every minute of the process and considered it a privilege to tell the tale of one of the most electrifying boxing trilogies in the history of this sport. Intimate Warfare traces the collision course of Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward from their earliest days through their 3 epic fights, as well as the aftermath of this great rivalry, which culminated in one of the greatest friendships in boxing. Intimate Warfare has received a 4.5-star rating from readers and was endorsed by Hall of Famers Harold Letterman and Joe Cortez and 2-time Trainer of the Year Virgil Hunter. Our foreword was written by Ray Boom Boom Mancini, another one of the greatest blood and guts fighters of our time. Get your copy today at Amazon.com. Welcome back to the Ringside Boxing Show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network, where we try to treat you to a slice of boxing history on a regular basis. And today we're going to do exactly that. I'm Dennis Taylor with John J. Responti, and in 1985, a 25-year-old boxer named Herman Montes stepped into the ring at the Olympic Auditorium to face his idol, the great Pipino Cuevas, in a fight that probably should have led to a world title shot. Montes knocked out Cuevas in the 3rd round and went home and waited for the offers that never came. And he got a little disillusioned. He was newly married and had kids to support, and at age 26, he walked away from the sport. You don't hear a story like that very often, and we're excited for the chance to welcome Herman Montes to today's Ringside Boxing Show to talk about his life and career and actually why he made that decision. Herman, thanks very much for coming on today. How are you?
Thank you. Oh, I'm good. Thank you.
Good deal, man. So, well, Pipino Cuevas, I think, was one of those guys who had a certain aura about him. He had that pulverizing knockout punch. He didn't smile, which made him intimidating. And by the time you got to him, he had already beaten Angel Espada 3 times, and Miguel Angel Campanino, and Soji Sugimoto, and Clyde Gray, and Harold Weston, and Pete Ramzani, and Scott Clark, Randy Shields, Harold Volbrucht. That's a pretty good lineup. And this is a guy who was a member of the International Hall of Fame. He is a member of the International Boxing Hall of Fame. You said he was your boxing idol. What was it like to get the news that you were going to face it in the ring?
It was something that was out of this world to me. It was an exciting day. I remember that specifically when they said you're going to fight Pipino Cuevas. It was like, yes, I want to do this. I want to be able to just prove that I am a good fighter and I can do this. I'll beat him. And we trained hard for it, and the first fight was postponed. It was called off, and it was discouraging in a sense, but not that discouraging as to where I didn't train again for the next offer,
Take us back to the moments leading up to that fight when you were sitting in that dressing room you called the dungeon. Were the nerves huge that night, considering you were going against a legend, and or were you supremely confident as a clock?
Well, I can say I'm human, and yes, there is some butterflies no matter what. I mean, I was a veteran-type fighter already to me, and what I would do is put these headphones on. Back in those days, it was a Sony Walkman, and I listened to my Latin jazz music, and it just comforted me and made me just relax, and I could vision me knocking Pipino Cuevas out. I psyched myself up that way, and I didn't worry about anything else but me knocking him out.
I read that you had one other thing in your pre-fight routine that kind of took the edge off. You drank a couple of beers.
I did, and it relaxed me. It wasn't supposed to be done from any tough fighter to do this, but hey, it was something that I kept quiet and I didn't say anything to anybody, and I did it, and it helped me. Yeah, now I can talk about it with no problem. But in those days, no, I didn't say anything to anybody.
Yeah. Hey, man, whatever works. You know, watching that tape, it really looked like you tried to have a stare down with him before the opening bell, but it didn't look like he wanted to.
I was in there just with showing confidence. I just wanted to let him know, hey, you're up against a tough man here. I'm not no pushover. I'm here to fight, and as soon as that bell rings, let's do this. Let's get it done. That's my attitude when I was going to fight Pipino Cuevas finally.
Herman, did you think that he might have underestimated you at all? Did you think he was taking you for granted before the fight at all?
I believe so. I think he was taking me for granted. He looked at my record and he probably thought, oh, well, you know, who has he really fought? What big names has he fought in that welterweight division? And it was a surprise to him. Yeah, you were trained by your dad, and he said something to you before the bell. Tell our audience what he said to you before the bell rang for that fight with Cuevas. May God rest my dad's soul. My dad was my coach, and at that particular time, it was the first time that I've ever heard this out of his mouth. But he, when the bell rang for the first round, he slapped me in the rear, and he says, "All right, son, kill or be killed." And I ran out there to fight, and it was on. You know. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, and that's why you ran across the ring at the opening bell, right? Or anybody who goes. The bell rang, says, "Come out and fight." You went right at him, right? And that was the reason, because your dad said, "Go get him." And the ref put his hand out to say, "Wait a minute, it's not ready. He's not ready yet." But hey, had I hit him and knocked him out right there and then, it would have been okay. It would have been legal. Yeah, you were in his corner before he ever turned around. Exactly. Oh, my. I wanted to get it done. Yeah. Uh-huh. Was there, the Olympic was just such an incredible place to fight. Not that I ever did, but I witnessed fights there. Was there a buzz right before that when you were running over there and before the bell rang? Was there already a buzz? There was. It was like, hey man, this is something. This is history right here for me. It's going to be for the rest of my life that this is a legendary fight. This is one fight that filled up the Olympic auditorium. So let's make the best of it. And the crowd was already, you could feel the crowd already on the edge of their seats, right? They were probably murmuring and stuff. And I was underdog, I was the opponent for this particular fight. And the crowd switched. They were saying Mexico, 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 and then it changed to Montes, Montes, Montes. So that was something, that psyched me even better. It was psyched me up. I could hear the roaring and the people saying Montes, Montes, Montes. So that gave me some confidence. Yeah. That first round, Herman. Again, it sounds like I'm working for YouTube, but anybody who wants to watch that first round, I mean, that's pre-Hearns Hagler, but that is one action-packed first round. Did you feel? And he hit you with some pretty good shots. Did you feel his power at all? To be honest, I did not feel any punch that hurt me. Not one time. I mean, my legs were in great condition. I was running gradually uphill and training hard for this third offer on me fighting Cuevas. And I didn't change any way of training and running. I ran just the same for every time that I was supposed to fight him, and I ran hard and was confident. I knew that I was in shape. So there's nothing that can get in front of me and beat me when I'm in great shape.
Was he the biggest puncher you ever faced, Herman?
I would say so, yeah. His record, he had significant amount of knockouts, and he did catch me with some good punches and if you watch the fight. And I mean, I just was never buzzed or rocked. I was never dazed. I was right back. When he caught me, I came right back.
Yeah, he sure did. Did you know by the end of the first round that you were going to? Well, you were confident you were going to beat him anyway. But were you even more confident at the end of the first round you were going to beat him? Yes. Why was that?
I had him. I just knew I had his number. I had him. I just knew it. Okay, this is on. I got this guy. I got him, and took it, and I showed it. I showed what I could do. It's just unfortunate that I didn't get an offer for the world title.
Yeah. So take us all back to that moment. What was it like in that third round when you knocked him out? I mean, again, here I go again. But anybody who watches it, he did a pirouette like a top. He spun around like a top.
Like 180.
Yes. Yeah, 180 and went down. That must have been shocking the crowd. Everybody must have. Were you even a little surprised when you knocked him out like that? When you spun around and was down?
Yeah.
Or did you know it? Or did you know it the minute you hit him? Did you know it the minute you hit him? That's it. It's over.
Yeah. I saw the opening. It was right there for me to do it, and I let my left foot go with a pivot, and it caught him right on the button. He was down, and I knew he wasn't going to get up. I knew that. I could feel it. And I just turned around, ran to my corner, and hugged my dad and told my dad I love him. And I was just so happy. It was such an exciting event.
Man,
it was
a rush.
It's a great rush. Yeah.
Herman, after that victory, you really expected some doors to swing open for you. Who were you hoping to fight at that point, and why didn't it happen?
Any of the welterweight title fighters that were there, anybody that was just at the top of the ranks, like maybe Yoribor Campos was coming up, and I was asking Maldonado, a guy who was managing me at the particular time, I says, get me Yoribor Campos. I'll fight, anybody. Just I will become world champion for you, Mr. Maldonado. I would say that to him, and it didn't happen, unfortunately. And hey, 6 months goes by, and my wife and my new wife, she's talking to me and trying to convince me that hey, boxing's political, and it's time to just get a job and move on for your future. And I did. I listened to her. I thank her today for it.
Man, what were those 3 months like, though? I mean, just waiting for the
6 months
ring and thinking it
through.
Yeah.
The anticipation, it was like discouraging. It was like I had high hopes. I really did. And then to be able to just say goodbye to the sport, it hurt. I cried like a baby to let go of the sport. Let go of it was a passion to me. And I just wanted to be a champion, and it just wasn't there, unfortunately.
Was there any kind of a tug-of-war going on between your wife and your dad? I'm sure your dad didn't want you to quit, did he, at that age?
Good question. My dad was the type of a man that he didn't push me to fight. He didn't push me to be a boxer. If I wanted to be, okay, but if I made a choice to quit and stop, he'd say, okay, also. It wasn't like I had to do this. It was just something that you have to be 100% in it, or if you're not, then don't do it because you can really get hurt in that ring, So, yeah, he didn't mind if I did quit. And when I told him I quit, he understood.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so where was your head 3 months later when you fought Jorge Vaca, a guy you had knocked out the previous year?
I after that I went out to Indonesia, and I was able to fight a champion boxer over that way, Francisco Lisboa, and I didn't know anything about him. I didn't know what type of a fighter he was. I just took the fight, and it was, to me, staying in shape and being ready in case that I did get called for a world title offer. And I went there and fought this guy and knocked him out in 2 rounds. I hit him with a hook to the body, and he went down and didn't get up. And that's when I came back, and I waited for a phone call, and it didn't happen. So it was time to say, okay, goodbye to what I loved, boxing.
But between that Vaca fight, tell us about that one, because you went in that, I'm sure, expecting to knock him out again and have him out.
See, I knocked him out once, and I already to me, it was like, okay, I got him. I'm going to find him again. I already know. I know what to do. And I went in there not fully in shape because I took on this job at Delco Ramey in Anaheim, and it was a pretty good job, and I tried it. It was an offer that my wife, her family knew of it because her brother worked there. So I took this job on and started working. It was like a graveyard shift, so I didn't care for it, but I did it to just show my wife that, hey, I'm willing to work. I'm a man that will work. We're married, okay. So let's do this. And I tried, and I was running, but not fully. I wasn't running 100%. I was running half instead of, what I should have done as 100% boxing training in the sport. So that affected my fight. I wasn't 100%.
Do you think that you might have even lost a little desire to train hard by then, Herman, or was the desire still there?
No, the desire was still there, but I also had this interference. I was trying to hold a job, trying to work, and then go to the gym in the morning after working graveyard, and then running in that. I would cut corners and say, okay, I already fought Blocker once. I'll do this. I'll do it half. I'll train half. And it doesn't work when you train half. It doesn't work. You have to train fully, and you're only lying to yourself.
Yeah. Was there any bitterness at all when you called it a day and quit?
No, there's no bitterness whatsoever. I thank my wife again. Like I said, it's like woulda, coulda, shoulda, but no, I'm happy that I quit. When I did, I had a pretty good record. I was young. Who knows what would happen if I did get a world title shot eventually, but it was just 6 months was enough time to just say, okay, it's not going to happen, and I walked away.
Was it difficult for you to enter the workforce, the rat race, after eight
Yes.
years as a pro fighter?
Yeah.
What kind of withdrawal pain did you have?
I wasn't used to just getting up and reporting to somebody, clocking in, and being like, just entitled. You had to just be there at this one place and clock in and clock out. It was a routine that I wasn't used to.
Yeah.
It was something that was new to me. So, yeah, it bugged me because I missed being in the gym and training and running and that stuff. So I had to make a big adjustment.
Did you miss the ring walk, the roar of the crowd, any of that?
I did, yes. For years I did. I missed the limelight. I missed that. Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
I wish I was fighting today.
Well, you go. That leads to this question. Yeah. How often did you think about returning? I mean, was that an issue at home, or did your new wife? I'm obviously assuming, but I think I'm correct. Wanted you to stay retired, but when you were by yourself, Herman, did you think, man, I want to get back at it, miss it?
It would come to my mind at times, and something just said, no, stay out of it. Don't go back. It's just work and raise your family and be married and, that stuff. So I did it. I just stayed away from it. But what I did do is get involved with the city, Parks and Recreation, and I trained kids and ran a program for the city of Paramount. And I did it for the city of Hawaiian Gardens. So I was still involved with the sport, just paying it forward to children that wanted to be a boxer and wanted to learn the sport. So I paid it forward to them. And one of the kids that I trained when he first walked into the gym, he was 8 years old, was a champion boxer, Abner Maurice from the city of Hawaiian Gardens.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that's one kid that, hey, I did start him, from scratch, and today he's
done well.
What kind of potential did you see in Abner right there in the early days?
He was a pretty boxer as a child. He had that sharp shooting, punching fundamentals. He could execute his punches really like picture perfect as a child even. So I knew that if he stayed 100% into the sport, he would go somewhere, and he did.
Yes, he
Today,
did.
He's, did a lot of good in the boxing.
How did you and your big brother John get into boxing? Tell us that story.
We were young kids, and my parents divorced, and we were starting to hang out with the wrong crowd and starting to just get into little trouble here and there. And my dad would find out about it because, well, my dad wasn't the type of father that stayed away. He picked us up when it was his time to pick us up on weekends and that. So when he found out from my mom that we were getting in trouble, that is when he said, okay, we're going to the gym. We're going to take you to the boxing gym. And sure enough, we did. And it was called the International Youth Boxing Club in Montebello. And from that day, we just loved it, and we stayed in it and got busy and training, and it was just being involved in tournaments and what have you. So it drove us away from going and hanging out with gang members and what have you. We just wanted to be boxers. We wanted to train and be good fighters. That was our dream, both my brother and myself. So it was something that drove us away from just being in the street corners. It kept us busy.
How good was John?
John was excellent. He was a world contender also. He fought some big names, you know. Bulls Edwards, Hilmer Kennedy, Macho Camacho, to name a few.
Man, oh man. Those are some good
ones. Yeah, and Herman, your dad was also right. This is where you guys, I remember you telling me this. You and your brother noticed, especially you, the trophies or whatever that your dad won as an amateur boxer. I mean, how good was your father as a fighter?
Well, he had some bronze trophies on the mantle, and there was a Golden Glove Champion award. And we looked up to that always as young kids, and we always told my dad, I want to box. We want to be boxers. And my dad was, no. But then as we grew older, and I was about 11 years old and started to get in trouble, that's when he said, okay, let's get you guys busy. Let's take you to a gym and get you involved in this sport. And from that point on, it really did take us away from, negative and got us to be positive.
What kind of guy was your dad? Was he a very quiet type of a father the kind that looked at you and you went, uh-oh? Or was he a little bit, what kind was he?
My dad was a type of father that raised us to have respect out there, to not be hoodlums and not to be troublemakers. He was a father that just wanted us to walk a straight line and to be good individuals in life. So my dad was pretty stern at times if he had to be. So I could just say that my dad was a good father. For him to stick by us even though they divorced and to be there always for us, it was something that sticks to my mind always. I love my dad and I miss my dad, and may he rest in peace. And he was a likable guy. He had a good personality and got along with people. Yeah.
We're talking to Herman Montes on the Ringside Boxing Show. Herman was a world-ranked welterweight back in the day. And, John, you wrote a story about Herman not too long ago in Max. And one story just really caught my eye. Herman, when you were 15 years old, you had the opportunity to spar with a guy who would become an all-time great, Ruben Olivares. Finish that story for us. What happened?
He was a world-rated fighter. I heard the name many times as a child in the gym, and eventually he was going to train at the International Youth Boxing Club in Montebello, and it was in the paper and that world champion Ruben Olivares was coming to the gym, and my dad worked it out with his coach that if Ruben was able to give me a few rounds to help me learn some boxing, fundamentals in there, and they worked to say, okay, he can box with Ruben Olivares. He'll get in there and work with your son. He told my dad. So then I got in there, and I didn't know, but I just was a little fearful because I knew this guy was a world champion and had a lot of experience. But I was just so how would you say it, tense, and I just threw a right hand and I dropped him, not meaning to do this, but it happened, He wasn't expecting it, but it happened, and I was like, oh no. So when he got off the canvas, he got up with embarrassment on his face. It was like, oh, I'm going to take care of this guy in front of me now. And he opened up on me, I wouldn't say 100% with power, but he opened up on me with a little bit of power, like to show me and make me respect him. And he caught me with a left hook to the liver, and I had never felt that punch in my life. And oh, did it hurt. I just wanted to crawl under the ring. I wanted to sit down, but I didn't. My heart held me up, but I was a painful experience. And knowing that was a good punch, I did that. I used it, and I learned how to throw that left hook to the liver, and it did help me in fights afterwards, in the future. It did help me. I like throwing that left hook to the liver. It just ruins the fighter. It stops your blood flow, and it just folds you. You can't get up once you get hit with a left hook to the liver.
Man, that must have been an epiphany, though, when you knocked him down. All of a sudden, in your 15-year-old head, oh, my God, I've got that kind of power to knock a world champion down.
True.
What kind of moment was that?
I was like, oh, no, I'm in trouble now.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to.
Sorry, sir.
But I was also just trying to defend myself and trying to, look good against this guy. And I'm only 15 years old, but what happened? Yeah. What an experience.
Herman, you had 17 fights in your first 23 months as a pro, and you won them all. What was that like for you at the time, rolling up that record and getting more and more attention and becoming better known? Are those great memories?
They were great memories. The winning in that boxing ring was the best high ever, I can say, as a human being. There's nothing that can replace that high. It's just such a really good feeling when you raise your hand as a victor, your victory in that sport, and it's just so good.
Yeah, I bet. Okay, Herman, this is a fun one because we talked about this when we were for the article. Tell our audience that story of what happened before you fought Quillo at the Olympic and that incident with the truck driver that happened before that fight. Tell us that story. That is an incredible story.
Oh, I was in great shape. Going to be fighting Herman Quayle, and I was training and just running a lot in that. And so I went to Main Street Gym one day, and on the way home, a trucker cut me off, and I beeped my horn at him, and he was very upset at me for beeping my horn at him. Who knows what the man had on his mind, but he took it out on me, and he pulled, we got to a red light, and he started calling me names and what have you, and at the same time he's jumping out of his truck door, and it hit the top end of my car, and it irritated me. It's like, wait a minute, and as he's coming out of his truck and telling me that he's going to kill me or what have you, I told him, I can put you in the hospital, I'm a professional boxer, and he put his arm back, telegraphing his punch, and by that time I just defended myself and threw him a 1-2. It was like, bam, bam, that quick. And he went down, his eyes turned white, and as he went down, I could hear the back of his head hit the asphalt on the street, and it sounded like a hard-boiled egg hitting the concrete. And it was scary because there was blood behind on the concrete, and I thought, well, blood was coming out of his ears, his eyes were white, he was out. So I panicked, and I just took off and went home. I went to my where I lived at the time, and I told the manager that was the apartment manager there, I told him, Raw, I think I killed somebody. He goes, what? And I says, yeah, I hit this guy. He cut me off, and I told him the story. He goes, let's go back. I'll take you, and we can find out, see what's going on, So we drove back, and the ambulance and the police and all that were in the middle of the street with this guy holding his mouth with a white towel, and I could see that, okay, he's not dead. He's okay. Let's go. So we left. So about a week and a half later, Detective Brown called me from the police department, and he says, Herman Montes, I need to see you in my office as soon as possible. Were you in a fight lately? And I says, well, yeah. And so I went in there, and he showed me pictures. Yeah, some stitches on his upper lip and on his bottom lip, and the back of his head had stitches. And he's saying, you can lose your boxing license and what have you, and you need to go to the district attorney at this date. So me and my manager, Benny Giorgino, went to the court and talked with the district attorney and the witness, I didn't know the witness was behind me was a bus driver, so I guess they were right behind and seeing everything that happened, and the bus drivers indicated that Herman was there and the guy was going to throw a punch at him, and Herman hit him with a punch and knocked the guy out. He was defending himself. So the district attorney didn't hold anything against me, and the individual that I knocked out, he didn't show up. He was supposed to be there. So they let me go. And they says, okay, it was self-defense. So that was a good thing, and I didn't want to ever hit anybody out there in the street. Or the guy, Herman Coyle, in front of me, it was a week, maybe a few days that I knocked this guy out in the street. I didn't want to hit Herman Coyle and knock him out. I just felt bad. I could see it in the shower. I visualized it. I could just not feel right about hitting anybody. I could kill somebody if I hit them, you know. That's how I felt. So it kind of I lost my 17th pro fight that way. It was a decision, but I just didn't feel, I just didn't have it.
Yeah, you weren't there mentally, really?
Yes.
Mentally. Yeah.
Psychologically, it was something in the back of my mind. I just couldn't get my punches out like I wanted to.
Yeah, well, it makes sense. So you didn't lose again for 2 years, and you fought this guy named James Buscemi, and there were some behind the scenes circumstances that only happens in boxing. Well, maybe not, but it happens in boxing too. You mind telling us that story about what happened there behind the scenes going into that fight?
I got involved with a woman and somebody that I met, and we ended up sleeping with each other, and later on I find out that I had a STD. So it was something that affected my ability. It weakened me. It made me feel like I wanted to just I didn't have any strength. I was weak. For about a year, it affected me, and it just took the soup out of my legs. It just made me feel bad. I didn't feel strong anymore. So when I fought Bill Buscemi, nobody knew this, but the night before I fought him, I had about 104 fever. I was in bed in the hotel there, and my dad, we were in Beaumont, Texas, and my dad walked in the room, and he saw that I was not feeling well, and I told him I wasn't feeling well, but he said I had to fight because there was so much money involved, and we had signed the contract, and I better get in there and do my best. So I fought him, and I didn't have the ability, the strength, the power. I think I rocked him one time, and that was enough, but I just didn't. I couldn't finish him off. I wanted to, and I knew I could, but I didn't have my legs were just weak. Yeah, it affected me, unfortunately, but that's karma. That's what happens, you know.
Hey, what did Vic tell Rocky Balboa? Women weaken legs.
Weaken legs.
Yes, it does. That's truth to that.
A couple more questions for Herman Montes. Herman, there was a lot going on around your weight division when you walked away from the sport. I looked it up today on the Ring magazine. At junior middleweight, you had Tommy Hearns and John Mugabe, Mike McCallum, Carlos Santos, Davey Moore, Julian Jackson. You know, man, there's a murderer's row there. At welterweight, you had Donald Curry, Milton McCrory, Maurice Blocker, Marlon Starling, Simon Brown, Lloyd Honeyghan, Colin Jones, Johnny Bumphus. Those were a lot of options out there. Who in your career did you really want to fight but never got the chance?
I would have fought any of those fighters as long as it was for a world title chance. It just didn't happen, but yeah, I would have fought any of them fighters. Any of those names, just throw them at me, and I would have went in there and tried my best to become a champion. I may have, but we don't know.
Who was the best fighter you ever fought on the night you fought him?
Best fighter, I would say. Well, as far as name-wise, Pipino Cuevas.
Pipino,
welterweight champion of the world, former welterweight champion of the world. I mean, yeah, big name, I would say. Another guy that I fought and became welterweight champion was a guy named Jorge Baca from Mexico. He fought Lloyd Honeyghan and got the belt for what was a couple of fights that he defended his title. And I knew nothing about George Vaca when I fought him the first time. I didn't know anything about his record. I just went and took the fight, and we fought. I was able to hit him to the liver and knock him out. He couldn't get off the canvas. So that was a good win for me.
Mm-hmm. Got him with the Ruben Oliveira's liver shot.
You got it, yes.
Yeah. Hey, last one for you. You fought, by my count, you fought 22 times at the Olympic. How special was that place to you?
It was real special to me. I loved fighting there. It was backyard to me. It was something that I had to do in my childhood life. I dreamt of fighting there, and I did. It was like such an excitement to be able to fight there and be main event, seeing your name on the easel up there, up on top. That was just like, yes, it was a great, great high, great memory for me. It was something that I'll never forget, and my family will never forget. It was awesome to fight out of the Olympic. I used to go there and watch roller derby and watch wrestling and what have you. So for me to be there and do something, a main attraction, a main event, that was awesome.
What was that? What was that dressing room like? The one you called the dungeon?
To me, it was like being down in this cold concrete room, and it was just silent. You couldn't hear anything at the room beside you. Everything was just cold and silent in there. It was, dark to me, and the lighting was dim. It wasn't real bright. It was an odd feeling because it was all concrete and you were down below the auditorium. So I called it a dungeon.
Did you ever get in the ring and look around and see celebrities out there?
I sure did. I was able to see Ryan O'Neal out there, a musician that would go and call my name out to me when I started to get in the ring and start moving around, warming up. Wooly Bobo, he was a Latin jazz musician who I really enjoyed, and it was exciting to know that he was there to see me and would call my name out to me. Rocky Balboa was there to see. Those are just certain people that, I can remember being there.
Wow. Okay, I keep saying last question, but I keep coming up with other ones. What's it like for you to go to an event now, and see, Palomino and all those guys that you used to know way back when? That must be a blast.
It is. It's super nice to be able to go back and just reminisce and just shake hands and say how you doing and just mingling with the old champions. And it's still a pleasure for me to go out there and meet these guys again and see that they're doing okay. And, we just get and start talking, and it's just wonderful to have these type of events.
Herman, that was – I'm sorry, Dennis, I jumped in. Herman, that was when when I first met you was at our last National Boxing Hall of Fame event. We were sitting there. You were sitting there with Armando Muniz, right? And we were talking.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, it was just incredible. Well, those events are tremendous.
Armando Muniz is a neighbor of mine, so to speak. So, we stay together, and we are involved with, the Jurupa Valley Youth Boxing Gym here in the vicinity where we live. So it keeps us busy with the kids and paying it forward. Mondo's a good man, and I look up to him also.
You mentioned the Main Street Gym a little while ago. What was that place like?
It was one-of-a-kind boxing gyms. It was such a great feeling to walk in there and see many great, great fighters that came out of there. Looking at photos on the wall, and it just made me want to be one of them fighters as well, such as fighters like Roberto Duran go and train there, Alexis Arguello, Kenny Turan would train there, an old-time fighter, Gil Cadilli, Enrique Bolaños, big names. I mean, I always wanted to be a name like their name, So yes, it was quite an experience to go there and train. They even made great movies out of that gym. So I'm happy to be a legendary legacy of that particular gym.
Okay. Got anything else, John?
Well, I was going to add this because I was talking to Herman yesterday, Dennis. Herman, you retired when you were 55 years old, right, which is quite young. So it sounds like even with everything we discussed, everything worked out for you pretty darn well, wouldn't you say?
Yes, I thank God for my life and for my wife, who is pretty good at guiding me and helping me invest in stuff like that. So I'm not wealthy or anything like that, but I do okay, So her and I are a good team. It's good to be a good team in our marriage, and I'll tell you, I'm happy. I'm able to travel and see the world, so that's one thing that's a good thing in my life. And I have children that I love very much. They're all doing good, and hey, what more can I ask for?
That's
How
fantastic.
many kids you got?
I have 4.
4 kids?
Mm-hmm.
Any of them want to become boxers?
They tried it, and I didn't push them. Like my dad didn't push us. My son boxed in high school. Herman and Maurice was involved with the high school. They're having welterweight type boxing there, and my son did try it, and he did fight one fight, and he won. He stopped the kid, and but he never followed it. He stayed involved in football for high school, and hey, if he wanted to play football, good for him. So he played football, and my other son tried it when I was running one of the city programs, and he fought, and he did well, but he just didn't stick with it. So I didn't push him. Hey, you got to be really serious about it, or you can get hurt in there. So hey, if they're not serious about it, then hey, no sense in trying. No sense in being in it.
Herman Montes was nicknamed the Kid, and he was still a kid by boxing standards when he walked away from the sport at age 26. He never got a world title shot that he deserved, and that's a bummer. But Herman, let it be known that you are remembered, man.
Oh,
and
thank you so much. Hey, it was a pleasure.
Hey, great talking to you today, too. Thanks so much for being a part of the...
Thanks, Dennis, and thank you, John. Okay.
You bet. Thank you.
Anytime.
Take care.
Okay.
All right.
All right, my friend. All right.
Bye.
Herman Montes on the Ringside Boxing Show. Hey, do you like this podcast? Do us a solid. Tell your boxing friends about us. Post the Ringside Boxing Show on your social media platforms. Help us grow. Also, don't forget to check out the best website on the planet for daily boxing news. We update ringsideboxingshow.com with the hottest headlines and most intriguing stories every single day. If you're a serious fan of the sweet science, this should be your first stop every morning, and it might be the only boxing site you need to visit all day. Discover us right now, and you will be amazed, guaranteed. ringsideboxingshow.com. We want to thank our expert analysts, Travis Hartman, Rizwan Zahid, and my partner John J. Responti for their weekly contributions, as well as our outstanding British correspondent Paul McLaughlin. And another huge thanks to today's featured guest, Herman Montes, the Kid, for being a part of today's podcast. Finally, we want to thank you, Ringside Nation, for being a part of our worldwide audience again today. Keep your chin tucked. We'll talk to you again next week on the Ringside Boxing Show.
Well, it's a great day for me to whoop somebody's ass. It's a bad day, so you better get off of my back. You might get cold cocked if you cross my path. It's a great day for me to whoop somebody's ass.